Well, first and foremost, welcome to everybody, and really glad to have everybody here. I want to talk a little bit about our football team. I would address a couple things and then certainly open it up for questions. I would just say from our end, 2 practices into fall camp already. This is, purposely wanted to kind of get in fall camp so I could talk about some of our players as we get into this with you guys. But 2 days into fall camp, what I would just say from my end is 11th year being a head football coach, 11 years in, going into my 12th season. And quite honestly, for the last 6 months, what I've witnessed from what was a very young football team a year ago is just been this unbelievable passion to grow forward. And I'm really proud of our football staff, our football coaches, and our kids and what's occurred over the last 6 months. November 26th, that TCU game last year obviously was humbling. Not easy, tough. When I walked onto the plane that day, I think Rob knows this, is, we use the book Chop Wood, Carry Water in our football program. We give it to every one of our kids that come in our program. And I take that book with me, and in the back of the book, I had etched after the first year that I read it, is when you focus on the roots, okay, and not on the fruits, we're certainly been at our best. And I thought probably, if I was praying for clarity at the time, I certainly got clarity in the TCU game of where we were and maybe where we needed to continue to grow forward. And, I would say by December 5th, I thought there was elite momentum that started to churn about a week and a half later towards the future of our football program. And I think the soul of this football team really started to take shape. And, I know I said this probably in January at some point, that, the value systems of almost a realignment of our football team and our football program around the things that have made us great here. And the first thing would have been, understanding the value of one football culture within our walls. Man, tying in all the pieces that touch our team and our program and aligning our football team to one football culture. I would say number 2 is competitive excellence. You lose young football team and you lose 7 games in the last possession of the game. And those of you that covered us, that's not easy to probably cover. And as the head coach, it's not easy to watch. But I think you're diligently diving into how do we get those things corrected. And how many times have I said, our success here, we play a ton of one-possession football games here. How do we do a great job winning in the margins? When we've been at our best, we've won those margins. When we've been at our worst, man, we've struggled to win those margins. And so, competitive excellence in things like, strength and conditioning, weight gain, academics, all the things that until the football season actually comes, where can we sink those values into? I would say the third thing is a standard and growth plan for every individual in our football program. Tyson sent you a chat. All right, cool. Standards and growth plan, though, for everybody in our football program. And my ask was everybody that touches our program and serves our kids academically, physically, nutritionally. How do we do a great job of really serving our program forward? And then the last thing is 10 strong. There are 10 position groups going into every season. Here at Iowa State, that's what we have. And those 10 position groups, how do we get them to be the best in the conference and give ourselves a chance to play championship football in the fall? And I think for the last 7 years, you've seen the majority of us play championship level football or be right there to play championship level football at Iowa State. How do we continue to get ourselves back there and get ourselves where we need to be? And so, some small, huge wins that I would say is what are indicators that this team has really bought into that. We had our greatest academic semester in the spring that we've ever had here, a team GPA of a 3.22. Our cumulative GPA here is a 3.18 GPA. Our kids' investment into doing right, again, great leadership in those areas here at Iowa State, but our kids buy into those value system. I think as you see our football team continue to grow forward this year, and man, you'll get to see some of our guys today, and as the weeks come and as soon as we get out, and play in the fall, man, our football team, an average strength and weight gain of 8 pounds per kid. The outliers, you're talking about some kids adding up to 20, 25 pounds of weight gain, and it's been sheerly incredible what Coach Kegi, Nicole Kiley, who's our nutritionist, and their team has done. And again, our kids' credit to buying into those value systems has been nothing short of exceptional. I would give a lot of credit to our staff. I'll start with Coach Haycock and Coach Shieldhouse. You're talking about ushering in some new faces for maybe the first time where we've really had some new faces come on board. I think those new faces have been a great sense of energy, positivity. You're talking about all these new faces coming from programs that have had elite success. And I think that energy fostered in by some of our great veteran leadership, and obviously Coach Shieldhouse in a new role. Coach Haycock continues to do a great job leading the way. Really proud of what that group looks like. And really all of this kind of came together really last Saturday. And last Saturday we were able to take our football team to Wildwood Hills Ranch. We had a 48-hour retreat. And, we had a great speaker. We had a great opportunity to be together. And then on Saturday, served about 100 young people at Wildwood Hills Ranch. And I think one of the things I've always loved about our football team is the ability to understand the value of give more than you take, and this ability to serve others and understand that it is really special to play at Iowa State. And one of the great things about playing here is you can use your platform to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so, what I would tell you is there is a lot of energy. There's a lot of momentum in our walls. We're really, really excited to get going with the football season. This group has certainly earned the right to get to fall camp and get themselves ready for the great opportunities that lie ahead this football season. Now, I know all of you certainly would have questions today on sports gambling. I know that's been a hot topic, believe me, in this state and certainly in our football program. I understand those questions that you guys would have, but what I would tell you is obviously this is an ongoing NCAA and an ongoing legal investigation. I'm empathetic to you guys because I know all of you have a job to do, and I get it. Okay. I'm also empathetic to the young people in our families that are going through some of this. And the reality of it is we just are not allowed to talk about any of those things to you. So from that end, I apologize. I know I've heard, some people are frustrated because today is different. Today is a little bit different. And again, I won't apologize for it. I think today was going to be different no matter what was going to happen because this is a young team, a new staff in a lot of ways. I felt like one thing I still feel like is guys have to deserve and earn the right to be up in front of you. And this is such a young team that we got so many faces that I think hopefully throughout the next couple weeks I can bring some of those faces to you and some of those people to you and certainly our staff, and we will certainly absolutely do that. But, today what we do have with our players are some of our veterans and our players. Offensively, obviously tight end Easton Dean, offensive lineman Jared Hufford, wide receiver Jalen Knoll. On the defensive side, it's TJ Tampa, it's Bo Freiler, and obviously it's Gary Vaughn. And then, from a special teams defensive aspect of it, a guy that's been maybe one of the best special teams players in the Big 12 and certainly is really coming on at the defensive spot as well, is Darian Porter. And so I wanted to make sure offensively, defensively, special teams, we're talking about football and getting to see and hear some of our guys. And like I said, I can promise you, and again, I know sometimes this media day has been bigger or different. We will have our coaches in front of you. We will have our players over the course of the next couple weeks in front of you. But I want to kind of make sure we handle today the right way and continue to move ourselves forward. So with that said, I, again, appreciate you guys a ton, and I'll open it up to any questions. And Randy, why don't you start, because it wouldn't be a football season if you don't lead the way. Appreciate you.
I don't know where we can go on here. Is everyone practicing with the team, together with the team? And where do you stand right now with the quarterback situation with Hunter? I'm not saying he was going to be the starter anyway, but with Hunter's situation, and what do you have now, three quarterbacks in the room? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the practice piece of it. Is I would tell you, number one, you're legally limited to only so many players allowed to practice, and the second thing is we would never comment on who practices or who doesn't practice because of injuries and different things. I would say the majority of our football team is practicing and on the football field right now, and we're in a really good spot that way.
I would say the second thing, let me answer directly the quarterback piece. You know, we talked about this, Randy, and I think I talked about this after the spring game. One of the things that I was probably most excited about our football team going into what I witnessed in January, February, March, and then really going through the entirety of spring is the competition. And I think if you look at every one of these position groups, and I certainly dive into all of them if you want me to, that one of the things that excited me most at the quarterback position is that there was great competition. And, you know, certainly we saw growth of Hunter during, you know, the 3 or 4 months that you know, he was out there in spring ball and working. But one of the things that probably excited me the most was what I watched from, you know, Rocco Beck. I think him getting great football reps a year ago. You've got to remember, he's a true freshman. He got there last year and really came in, was not an early enrollee, you know. So Rocco really grew through the football season. I think really by midpoint of the season took over the 2 position and then really put himself in position to get in football games. And, you know, when he got in games, there were a lot of really positive things that started to occur. And I think it gave him confidence going into the offseason. You know, I think from J.J. Cole's standpoint, one of the benefits for J.J. is he got spring practice. And I think we all know that have covered this area, or certainly know J.J., a lot of talent, a lot of great God-given ability, a great passion for the sport of football, really great growth in spring ball. And, you know, I think he's really had a great summer, obviously, as well. And then for us to get Tanner Hughes, a guy that has played football, I mean, has played college football reps, a guy that, you know, has had a unique pathway in that Northern California area, like a lot of other players that have kind of come out of that area at the quarterback position, you know, where they went to junior college and then have gone on to play Power 5 football, and, you know, has a lineage of his father and his uncle doing the exact same thing. Tanner, you can almost see the confidence in him already just because he's had the ability to already play and go through fall camp. So, you know, we feel like that's a really healthy room. We're really excited about it. And again, for me, at the quarterback spot, we've seen a bunch of different quarterbacks have great success here. You know, you've seen Kyle, and, you know, obviously you've seen Brock. And I think one of the great traits is, you know, only thing I need those guys to do, lead the team and take care of the football. And I think those guys have a lot of confidence to be able to do all those things. And I would tell you, I think their supporting cast around them is really talented as well, and we're really excited about that group.
Is there a number 1?
No, I think it's really hard to have a number 1. I think you already knew the answer of what I was going to say, probably. And, you know, I joked that somebody asked me, well, when are you going to announce a starting quarterback? I think Hines, when would I announce one? Probably by November at some point is probably at some point when I would do that. Please don't. But, you know, the reality for us is I think we have to watch this competition. And you've heard me say this a million times. You don't even know what you have until the lights come on. And I think we got to continue to have a challenging fall camp, which we were going to have no matter what the situation was, and continue to watch these guys grow forward. I'm really confident in the who, and I'm really confident in their talent, and I really look forward to watching that group develop.
What was your reaction to allegations of your players allegedly betting on their own games?
Yeah, you know, it's such a good question. I first of all, I think the reality of any of this, most of us are parents in here, right? And I think one of the things that I love my job, because part of what I love about being a college football coach is the growth of young man to man, 18 to 22 years old. And the reality of it is, you know, somebody said, well, man, is this a cultural issue or this? No, this is the issue at hand is a society issue. And the reality of it is society issues are always going to challenge the culture, whether it's your family culture or your football culture. And what you are always constantly trying to do is educate your young people to make great decisions, to, make great choices, and to put them in the best position to be successful and become the best men that they can possibly be. And so, you know, I think that my only reaction is we know the reality of that situation currently is it's an ongoing investigation. We don't know anything more than that, and I think time will tell what all those things really are. And what you do is, just because a young person makes a mistake, you don't give up on them. You continue to love and care for them and help them through whether it's going really good or whether they're going through tough and tiring times.
When you, I guess then look back on your efforts, your being cumulatively as a program and athletic department, to put players in the best position to understand the severity of gambling at all, and then on your own game, how do you evaluate the messaging to them on that?
Well, I think it's as anything. If it's not, maybe if it's not where it wants to be or you need it to be, you evaluate it and you say, man, we want to be our best. I will say this. I think our compliance office does a really good job working really hard to educate our young people through different periods of time through the year of, educating our young men on what the NCAA rules are and what is going on. And, again, it's the constant messaging of that and the constant messaging of myself about choices and understanding that the choices you make have a direct outcome on the goals and aspirations that you want to have. And so, I think anytime that, something isn't exactly where you want it to be, you reflect and say, how can we do it better? At least that's how I look at those situations. And, it's a situation for all of us that we have, like I said before, there's great empathy. And I think we always look, how can we continue to do it better for the betterment of everybody else? But what I would say, is I do think our staff has done a really great job of doing and helping our young men try to understand the NCAA rules.
Culture is a thing you've brought up a couple times already, and you talked about alignment in one culture. Would that suggest that that wasn't necessarily the case last year or previous years? And what are your feelings of your culture being able to handle what is going to be a lot of scrutiny and what is likely going to be a lot of controversy, twists, turns, and everything that comes
along with it all,
and playing a football season?
Yeah, in all of it. Yeah, again, great question. I would say, do I think we were drastically off culturally? No. Do I think handling what happened 21 and 22 were certainly unique situations? 21, obviously extremely veteran team, a lot of expectations. You felt like you were a hair off at times in 21. In 22, you're the third youngest team in college football, and you act like it at times. And I think, and you can say you coach like it too, right? Like I think acted like it and maybe coached like it at times. And so I think from our end of it, you're constantly trying to evaluate where are we a hair off or a hair on. I think one of the things that I would say culturally that I was really proud of a year ago was our kids never quit. Like, we kept playing, and I know I've preached forever, don't worry about the result. Like, we need to worry about the process. And probably a little bit of veteran leadership and some of those guys that we've talked about ad nauseum here, and yet so many of those young guys that are back on this team that have now becoming great leaders. And I do feel culturally we're as aligned as we've been. And I think that's any business, any organization, I think you're always yearly looking at where is your alignment? Are you where you want to be and where you need to be? And I just feel like, to me, there's just a sense of oneness and energy here that we've had. And obviously, will we need it? Yeah, every football season, every team in America is going to have some sort of adversity. Our adversity has come a little bit earlier. And, I think I said this at Big 12 Media Day, and, I feel like our program has always been worthy to suffer since we've been here. And the only thing I mean by that is I think suffering, when you go through hard times, it has the ability, and you can persevere through it, it brings endurance. And I think the one thing that endurance reveals is character. And one of the things that I think all of the things going on that are outside of our walls, are things that are going to test our endurance and character of the guys inside of our walls. But there's no group and no young men and no coaching staff that I'd rather be with going into the 2023 season than what resides here right now. So we're really excited about the opportunity at hand to kind of get on the field and play the sport of football.
Matt, you've never been afraid to play true freshmen. I mean, dating back to your first year, we saw a bunch of them. Threw Mike Rose in there on the road at Iowa. Feels like it's more prevalent now in the sport to play these guys earlier. And I guess you have a true freshman quarterback that could be in the mix, depending on how it plays out. What have you learned about that? Where's your stance on throwing those guys in now, now that you've been here for, 8 years now?
Yeah, crazily, yes. Yeah, Chris. I think the point on true freshmen being ready to play, you've seen in the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, is this shift to high school student. I think even look in the state of Iowa, right? And so many of you guys are from the state and cover the state high school football-wise too, that you see these kids going to trainers, and you see these guys that have shifted from football players used to be wrestlers and basketball players and doing all these things, where I feel like you've seen these guys really get into sports performance so much earlier in their career. And I think what it's created is young players coming in and being at least more physically ready to compete on the football field. And I would say from an Iowa State standpoint, I look at those teams where we've been really special, or we've reached our full potential. And I think one of the special formulas for us has been, you got to have great veteran leadership, but you got to have a really, really powerful freshman class. And because when you have a really powerful freshman class, what it does to the roster is you go out to practice, and now there's this really talented freshman that's ready to play, and it's pushing everybody and making everybody kind of feel uncomfortable, to be quite honest with you. And, I know from our end, we'll see, this is me speaking this in August, but I would at least say from the traits of the young men that I saw come in January and to what I've witnessed in the first 2 days of fall camp, is that this is maybe the most talented freshman class that we've ever brought in here. And, a lot of credit to our staff, because we brought it in under a 4-8 football season, adversity and tough time. Those kids stayed the course with us, and yet those kids, I think, really believed in who we are and the value system of what this program's really about. And, I still think young kids today, we talk tradition, like they don't know a lot of tradition, right? But these kids have kind of stayed on the value system of why and who we are and what this program's been about. So I think this group's been really special. Benny Nagoye certainly is a guy that's come in, in January. He's flashed and maybe is as just pure talent of a receiver that we've had long, can really run, can threaten you vertically. I'm really excited certainly about what he's looked like already. I think we'll certainly push, that group, and I think that group is probably more improved than people think, with Jaden Higgins and obviously Jalen Knoll and some of the guys that we're getting back there that I feel really positive about. You got a guy like Ben Bramer, who was a huge recruiting win at the end of recruiting, actually didn't come here until, Ben didn't really touch base with us until June. And yet Ben's a guy that put on 20 pounds since the time he was here in June to he's 241 pounds the first day of practice. And you're talking about a 6'7" kid that's physically can add great depth to what I would already say is one of the deepest positions, in our team right now, and that's the tight end group. You go to the tailback position and you talk about what Carson Hansen and Abu Sama, you got two guys, the Gatorade Players of the Year in both states, both guys uberly impressive of what they bring to the table already in terms of competitive excellence and things that we've talked about. We talked a little bit about JJ. You flip on the defensive side of the ball, and, I think there's guys across the board there. I'd probably start with Jack Sadowski, a guy that had an incredible spring and was running with the ones by the end of spring practice at Mike linebacker, and a guy that's, physically really talented and can do a lot of really special things. So, I think you look at this team, and I think that's one of the special things that you're really excited about is probably what this freshman class has got the ability to bring. Samuel Same is a defensive end that, I watched the game last night, and you're like, man, that guy's really special that was playing with 99 on his back. Man, do you ever have a chance to get a guy that's got some of those traits? And, Samuel's flashed some of those, kind of built the same way in talent. So, there's things there that you're really, really bullish on and really excited about. Young pups, we'll see. Light's got to come on. We know freshmen, you're talking about them. We'll see if they're going to show and what they do. But I think the one thing they've already done is heighten the awareness of everybody in the football program because of their love for football and, honestly, their God-given ability. So we're excited about those guys.
Matt, I guess I'll apologize for asking you to elaborate on that moment after TCU. But in as much as it was an aberration in terms of the points that were allowed, there's always seemingly, with the close losses, there's an absurd stat, and I think they had something like 375 yards or something for 62 points, and I was like, sorry for the preamble, I don't think I've seen that happen.
Right.
And what was it like in a season of that, where coming down to last possessions, it seemed like there maybe were a lot of those moments where it was like, how did that happen the way that it happened?
Yeah. I think, Rob, you know, you're reflecting going into that TCU game. You know, it just, at least I was, you know, it's Thanksgiving, you're going to play those guys. It's the end of the season. We just gut-wrenching lost to Texas Tech. Not pretty, you know, and I think you're asking yourself for clarity. Like I was, like, man, where are some of these things? And I think one thing that the TCU game at least gave you, now TCU, give them credit because we probably played a very similar game the year before the opposite way, right? And the reality of it is, you know, you tip your hat because we saw that end up being a great football team. But you look at some of the stats even in that game and you're like, dang, you know, there's still some moments in that game you're like, we're playing, there's some traits of really good things occurring here, but the things that got you beaten some of those one-score games got you embarrassed by a really good football team, turning the football over, right? Couple special teams errors, you know, couple big plays in some critical moments. And so it's just, again, I think it was very revealing to what gaps do we need to continue to fill in right now and continue to move ourselves forward. So, you know, if you remember back to 16, you know, very similar to that West Virginia game, that last game of 16, and you know, tough to be a part of that, tough to be the coach, and yet you also have to be the first one to say, where do I have to get better, and how do we do a great job leading this thing forward?
And a player-specific question, Jared Hufford's going to be here. How would you how would you describe his career thus far, how he's developed, and also the offensive line room's continued growth, presumably, since spring, summer?
Yeah, you know, let me say this about Jared, because I do think in two guys, we got two seniors that are coming today, right? And I think this is a great, you know, because you can sit up here and say, man, everybody gained 8 pounds, but like, look at TJ Tampa. He's a senior, and the physical growth that guy has made in the last 7 months, right? Like, freshmen are supposed to grow, but the seniors, to be able to physically take that growth has been remarkable. And I think you look at what Jared's done. I mean, Jared has put on 25 pounds physically, pound for pound, one of the strongest kids in our football program, 600-pound squatter, you know, 400-pound bencher, man, a guy that looks like what a guy like Jared should look like. So, again, those guys buy in and growth process to, man, we're seniors, but, hey, we got to grow too. And where's that growth got to occur? And I think for Jared and himself, one of the things I've always appreciated, he's always done what's best for the team, not what's best for Jared. Because Jared, we've asked him to play left tackle. We've asked Jared to play right guard. You know, he's been the guy over the last 2.5, 3 years that wherever we've needed him to be, we've moved him for the betterment of the football team. And, you know, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about Jared is he's the most selfless player that we've had in that offensive line room, and he's a guy that's always doing what's for the betterment of the team. I think he's really took the mission of, I want to change where this O-line room is to where it wants to go. He's been the guy that's been leading in the front, honestly, since January. And not just by his actions, but obviously vocally too, and a kid that we're really proud of. I think he's got a chance to be, you know, a draft pick here, and a guy that's got a chance to have a really special career for a long time. I think one of the best interior players in the conference on the offensive line. Now, you know, that offensive line room, again, I can sit up here and say, man, we're going to be great. We got to prove that we're ready to take another step forward. And we know that. We understand that. I think really important for our group. I would say competition-wise, what I love is we've been in 2 practices already, and there has been every time I see who's with the ones, it looks like it's another group of 5 guys, and it's looked like that. And I think it'll look like that probably for the next 3 weeks until we can see who's ready to compete and be the guy. The great thing that group's got is great competition. I think there's been, again, I give Coach Clinton a lot of credit, but I really give Coach Kagi a lot of credit too. Physically, this is a different looking offensive line probably than we were a year ago, and I think that part certainly will aid in our growth process. But you know, we obviously have to prove it and not sit up here and say it. So I think that group understands that, and I think Jared's ready to be the leader of that group for sure.
Hey Matt, what is the impact that, you know, Coach Pauly has really had on the wideout room since he's come in? And where are you most impressed with that room? You mentioned a couple players, but maybe specifically some of those depth players in there as well.
Yeah, Coach Pauly, again, you talk about championship pedigree, and Noah won a college football Division II championship, in Minnesota. Duluth was a great football player up there, captain. Then was a part of, as an offensive coordinator there at Duluth, comes back, goes into the education world, comes back, hired as the offensive coordinator, calling plays for a team that gets to the national semifinals. And then from there goes to North Dakota State. And obviously, you're talking about, again, one of the best programs in college football, and the success that he's had, not only in the development of those players, but schematically, and some of the things that they've done was a key assistant to all those areas. And so I think Noah brought a lot of not just a winner, but a guy that was a great position coach, a guy that has played that position, which I always, think is really big. And on top of it, a guy that understands what it looks like to win, and win how we need to win and want to win football games. And so I think Noah's brought a lot to the table in that wide receiver room, but I think he's also brought a lot to the table in that offensive staff room. When you look at the position group in general, I think, again, it starts for me with the two guys that have at least proven it in college football. I mean, Jaden Higgins. Jaden is a guy that's got great talent. You look at the tradition of the X receivers that we've had here that are elite players, and the Lazards and the Butlers, and obviously the Hutchisons. And I think certainly Jaden, you go back and you watch his collegiate career, he's got those traits. He's long. He's got the ability to go get the 50-50 ball. He can really run. Then you got Benny Nagoye, who's kind of cut out of the exact same mold as Jaden, which is really exciting. I think a guy that's really come on as a freshman that we redshirted a year ago is Jason Essex. Jason's 217 pounds. He's 6'2", 6'2 and a half, big hands, bully, can really do some things that are really special, really has grown physically through the offseason, has had a really good start to fall camp. And Greg Gaines, you talk about those big receivers. And then you got some guys that can really run. I think when you talk about that, obviously, you talk about Dimitri Stanley, you talk about Jalen Knoll, a guy that we missed a year ago that you're talking about a 10-4 guy in high school in the 100 is Cron Adams. And, we didn't have him all season. And, to get Cron back and healthy, I think showed out a little bit in the spring game. And the guy had a couple really nice plays, has had a great summer, has really done a great job for us in there. And then some guys I think that have proven that they can help us. You got Aiden Bitter, who has made big plays in big moments, kind of been the steady Eddie, the guy that can do it all, a jack of all trades. And then Daniel Jackson, a guy that's kind of been on the verge at times here of man, really doing some special things and just trying to put the consistency to that all together. I think has elite traits, but really kind of waiting to watch what that guy does. And then, the other guy that I think would be foolish not to talk about is Kai Black. Kai, 225 pounds. Again, that physical, big-bodied guy that, we're really excited about what he brings to the table, and getting him in January was really big for us. So that's kind of what that room looks like, and excited about that room right now.
Matt, you talked about the freshman running back, but what about Jairell? What about Cartavius? What about Eli and the PJ, the Stanford kid?
AJ.
Yep. That's the one. I'll never get that right. Are they practicing with the team, and how are they doing?
Yeah.
And one more. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then once you get done with that, do you know how many more players, if any, could be under the situation?
Yeah. So let me answer the second question first. Right now, Randy, we don't. Obviously, the communication, I do think internally has been really good, and I think it's hard for even internal, because it's not just this is not an NCAA or an Iowa State investigation. This is an NCAA and legal matter. I think our leadership team here has done an incredible job what they can telling us. When you talk about that running back room, the only guy that hasn't practiced is Jairell. When you look at, the running back room, I would say, to me, when you talk about that room, I think you look back to last football season, and the thing that's got me really excited was I got up here last year and I talked to everybody probably about a freshman in Cartavius Norton. You saw that first run against SEMO, and you're like, "Ooh, this guy's ready to explode." and man, his hamstring, it's a hamstring tear. He's out for 7 weeks. And you get him back at the end of the season, and then he has a really good finish. That last game, probably was his best game as he's kind of getting back in the groove. You talk about Eli Sanders. I think Eli, man, maybe wasn't ready in the moment early in the season. You talk about Kansas in some of those games, and then you talk really about his game at Texas Tech and his game at TCU and what he did. And I think we've all really felt very confident about what Eli Sanders has got the ability to be, and you've seen elite flashes. Can he put the consistency together? And then you find a guy like AJ, and AJ, one of the things that he brings to the table for us is, man, a physical, big back, complete tailback, a guy that can kind of do everything, and, a guy that's played the position, a guy that understands it. And so, I look at that room and I see 5 guys right now that are practicing that are like, they're ready to compete to be the guy. Where, again, you were probably a year ago, you weren't in that boat. You were really young behind, obviously Jirel. You thought you were at one place and then probably didn't have the depth that you needed, at least ready to play, and you put that on me as much as anybody. So, yeah, that's how I feel there. Yeah.
Are you allowed to expand on Jirel?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously we have guys that don't practice for a multitude of different reasons. Yep.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, the secondary set a high bar last season. How do you view the capability of that group, and how important is it to have some consistency and continuity on that side of the ball? Yeah,
I think it's huge. Consistency and continuity in college football, I always still feel like are best. I think when you look at that group, and I look forward to talking about this secondary, because to me, I want to give credit twofold. First of all, to Coach Broomfield, and I think one of our huge offseason hires was Coach Poteet coming here. Hank is 10-year NFL vet, won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, a guy that's played that corner position at an elite level. You look at the development of the NFL players he had at Toledo. You certainly look what he did at Wisconsin and the pedigree he's brought here. I think he's already had a huge impact in that room as well. And you talk about two guys with Broom, and you talk about Hank as great teachers, not just teachers of the game, but teachers of young men. And so I think that group is really fortunate. I think when you look at the corner position, everybody's going to talk about TJ and Miles, and they should. Those guys are great players, and they've proven to be great players. I think the thing that you want to have in college football is elite depth. And, I would tell you, you got Darian Porter, who probably had a very similar TJ Tampa year. If you look at TJ's sophomore year to what Darian did, we moved him from receiver to corner last year. Man, had some good plays, was hair off on a couple other plays. But, man, I think a guy that's just ready to explode in terms of what he can do for this football team on the defensive side of the football. You look at a freshman last year, Terrell Crosby. Terrell Crosby redshirted a year ago, has elite traits, really showed up in spring ball, was nothing short of exceptional at the corner position. In spring ball, I think we'll continue to push for playing time this year. Miles Norwood, we had two guys that literally got hurt and they were out after the second game of the season. Miles Norwood, who's a long, really talented corner that came to us from Iowa Western Junior College a year ago and really has done a great job. And then Jontez Williams had shoulder surgery after the second game a year ago, and he's back. And I would say the 2 guys that probably have had the best 2 practices. Now, that's not real football, right? There's not pads on yet, but there's helmets on, so it's kind of football. But those guys have had really, really good practices, and it's really exciting to see them. So, man, you're talking about 6 names, right now at corner that you're like, man, guys are coming in and ready to compete. We're really excited about that group. Then you go to safety, and obviously you have 3 guys with Bo. You have Jeremiah Cooper, who probably doesn't get enough credit for the season he played as a true freshman last year. And then Malik Verdone, kind of in the same boat. We lost Malik, after that Baylor game, and that was a really tough loss because you kind of had Malik starting in the boundary. You had Anthony starting to the field. One of the blessings of that loss was Anthony went to the boundary and Jeremiah Cooper got all those reps and had the ability to play the field and played really good. And I think the reward is a year later, man, you got a lot of guys that got experience there at that safety spot. But then, you talk about guys behind him. Trey McGee got some reps a year ago, started to play really good football for us at the end of the football season. He's back with experience that we're excited about. I think another guy is Trayvon Howard. We've been really, really excited about Trayvon Howard. Again, had a shoulder injury, missed him for the majority of the football season. Healthy, had a really, really good spring practice, a physical middle safety. I think that middle safety position, you got to have depth and guys that can play. We've been our best there when that's happened. And then Blake Thompson, another young man that we redshirted a year ago that came into us from a junior college, and we kind of put on the shelf a year ago, had surgery about midway through the season, but man, had a phenomenal spring. And again, another guy that's really done a great job. So, I think when you talk about that group, and Ben Nickel, Cam Smith's a freshman there, Jamison Patton has already come in with some wow moments. You talk about another freshman, Chris, that should be worthy of being noted. I mean, Jamo's come in and been really, really impressive early on. So to me, a lot of competition, a lot of guys fighting for playing time. And again, you couple that with on the top end, guys that have proven it in games, it's usually a pretty healthy situation.
Matt, sort of a two-part question here, but they're connected. If you could clarify or amplify for me why coaches aren't available today, and then secondly, what is it about Nate that made him an offensive coordinator in your eyes?
Yeah. The coaches piece of it is, I think, and I'm just going to be completely transparent, with some of the news that broke Wednesday, we didn't know some of that news. I think all of that is, man, so new to us, and we got a lot of new faces. And I just felt like from my end of it, it should be me being out here and talking about our football program. And our coaches will certainly be available as we get into fall camp. I want to get off to a great start. I do. And I want our guys to focus on caring about our kids and kind of getting ready for practice. And I want to make sure that I'm the guy that's up here talking about our football program. But, we'll make sure that our staff is going to be available through the entirety of the rest of camp. So that's just completely honest and transparent. I know that probably doesn't make everybody happy around here. I apologize if that offends anybody. But I think from my end, I want to do what's best for our kids and certainly best for our football program and continue to keep that momentum we have going forward internally. I think the second part of Nate's question is what makes him really special. And to me, Nate he's a great football coach and a great football mind. What I love about Nate more than anything is who Nate Shieldhouse is. And in college football, we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old young men. And I know I've went on my rant about that. But that's what I believe. I believe that we are not just building football players and football schemes and football teams, but we're building young men into men. And I think one of the things that Nate certainly has the maturity of, and probably through his own collegiate experiences of, good days and tough days, is understanding that value system. And I think Nate has done a great job of, we've built a really good staff around Nate. I think he has done a really great job of, not only from a football X&O standpoint, where can we be better? Obviously we have to be better. We took a significant step back a year ago, and a lot of it, we lost a lot of really good players that were the bulk load of the success we had. But, there are still some areas that we need to improve structurally and making sure that we have a great plan to give our kids the best chance to be successful. And, I think Nate's got that humility, that character, and the vision to lead the football team, from the offensive coordinator standpoint. And I also think, again, playing quarterback is a great benefit to Nate. I think that quarterback position, we know that it's like the head football coach. It gets evaluated, probably the most. It's got the ball in his hands as much as anything. And, I think Nate's understanding of that, both mentally, physically, and all the intangibles that come with that, I think it's been really great to have Nate in that room coordinating from the quarterback position as well. So I think they've certainly got off to a great start, and I give a lot of credit to Nate, but that would be my answer to that.
With Jordan Lang, I believe the new special teams coordinator, how is he balancing between running backs coach and special teams, and then is there a new emphasis or maybe more of an emphasis on special teams?
Yeah. Jordan's come in. One of the great things about Jordan's is, he's a former head football coach, and head football coach at the NAIA level. I think one of the great things about when I was the offensive coordinator at Mount Union, I was the recruiting coordinator. I did the laundry. I was responsible some days to like paint the football field. So you got to do it all, right? Like you don't have all these great people that are here to help serve you in all those areas. And I think Jordan, being the head football coach and building a program from scratch, that's what was my appeal. I knew he could handle, being the running back coach and also serving the duty as a special teams coordinator. I think, again, it's about anything. Just like I said with Nate, it's not one person. It's building a great staff around him. Offensively, Sheldon Croney is back as a graduate assistant. Sheldon thinks he was a great player, but he was a really good football player here for us. But a guy that understands our system, knows what the expectation level is. So that's a great asset to Coach Lang's for sure. And then, from a special team standpoint, we've got some great quality control coaches that have been with us. Rory Walling, who, again, thought he was a great special teams player, was a really good special teams player, so he's there to help and be an asset. Rob Grandy, who's been with us over the period of the last 6 to 7 years. And so, philosophically, is there change? No, I think what we need to be is I think the best thing is how can we be the best teachers for our kids? How can we fundamentally make sure that what we're asking our kids to do align towards schematically what we're trying to do? I think sometimes we get caught up in the philosophy. Most people are doing the same things. It's how we do them, and I think that's one of the great things that Jordan's kind of helped given a vision to, is the how process of that. So I think he's off to a great start, and again, excited about Coach Lang certainly being a part of our program.
I got two. The first one is, you mentioned there's some things you don't know and things you learned with the rest of us this week. It's the level of concern there could be unforeseen disruptions specifically related to gambling, whether it's tomorrow, next week, or October 4th.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you always have concern, especially how things have kind of evolved over the course of, the summer and just how it is. I think what you try to do is continue to evaluate the situation for what it is. And I know I said this and I wasn't being smug in Dallas. You got to protect the team. And every decision you make has got to be for the betterment of the team. And, again, that's really what we're trying to do, taking the best communication we get from the university, try to protect our football team, and obviously do everything in our best interest for everybody involved, because that part's really important.
I think this might be the first time since Lanning moved to linebacker that you guys are opening a season where it doesn't seem pretty obvious who your quarterback's going to be. What does having that, not uncertainty, but competition within practice do, both positive and maybe not positive, for the entire football team?
Yeah, see, and I'm with you. I think it is. There's a lot more positive than not positive, because I'm probably so bullish on the talent and what I've seen from the guys that are competing at this spot. I probably was even more nervous then because I didn't know what we had, to be quite honest with you, and that's a great point. I think, you were just – you couldn't forecast what the future looked like there. Now I know I have a really good indication of what the future looks like. We've been in this somewhat of this system for a while. We know what are those things that we're looking for when it is maybe cloudy of exactly who that person is. And I think, to me, when you have competition like that, and me and you have talked about this a little bit, Heinz, like, it's competition drives the product. And to me, the cream always rises to the top. I feel like at times where we've gotten in trouble here is when, and it's natural, there's almost an entitlement to, oh, I'm the guy. And next thing you know, there's a lack of growth, and that growth plateaus, and you don't have to fight for your position. And, again, when I'm using Division III Mount Union, one of the great things there, though, we had great players, and you had to come every fall camp to earn the right to be the starter. And to me, that's been an ongoing process here. Is it a challenge here at times? Yes. Do we have to continue to be our best? Yes. I give Derek a lot of credit and our staff, because I think we've recruited. fluff. Like, I think you look at the numbers, we've recruited really well the last couple of years. We have good talent here, and that is allowing us to have great competition in practice. But at that quarterback room, man, when that's competition, I think it raises everybody's level across the board. So I almost see it as excitement, and I think it's almost given us some energy as we've gone into fall camp, because you can feel it. And there's talented guys competing, which I think is certainly a bonus from our end of it. So great question.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for everything.